Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are Miguel Delaney, Chief Football Writer for The Independent, and the Mirror's Chief Football Writer, John Cross. Welcome to you both. John, come to you with the back page of the Mail. Reds on a roll. The lead story for many, of course, Liverpool's victory over Real Madrid at Anfield. Slot's superstart goes on as Liverpool blow away champions at Real. Lewis Steele there for the Daily Mail. John, just how impressive were they tonight?
Hugely impressive, Teddy. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. It was a performance full of energy, full of passion. You could really feel the atmosphere and the noise just coming through your TV set from Anfield as well. The team have really taken the crowd with them. Arne Slot has obviously done a fantastic job. What an amazing start as Liverpool manager. But really, the crowd have really bought into Slot's style and his style of football. I mean, I thought at times, there's so many standout players for Liverpool. Bradley being an obvious choice. His energy, it was absolutely sensational. Good goals, drama with Mbappe missing a penalty, with Salah missing a penalty. But really, there was only ever one team in it. And I thought Liverpool were absolutely fantastic. They completely overwhelmed Real Madrid, were much the better team. Made Real Madrid look very ordinary. Yes, Madrid are missing players, but I have to say, I would be concerned if I'm Ancelotti. I know we probably say this absolutely every year, and the worse they get, the more likely they seem to actually end up winning the competition. But this year particularly seems disjointed. It was, yes, they're missing players, as I say, but I do think that Liverpool, it was a combination of Liverpool making Madrid look very ordinary, Madrid being very ordinary themselves, but a wonderful performance from Liverpool. You shouldn't take that away from them either.
Yeah, Liverpool top of the Champions League group, Real Madrid 24th, which is the final spot for a playoff place as it stands. Let's go to The Guardian, Miguel. The real deal, or the Real deal, statement win for Slot after penalty drama. 17 wins for Slot out of 19 games, Miguel. The real deal, how much can they win this season? Are you convinced?
Oh, yeah, I have to say so. I mean, this win felt significant for a few reasons. One of the main ones being, on a most basic level, no one can say Liverpool haven't beaten anyone good yet, or anyone top level yet, because they're beating the champions of Europe. And there was also something very significant about that performance as well, because let's be fair, on Sunday Liverpool probably got away with it a bit. It maybe kind of fed into this this feeling or belief that the run they're on, as impressive as it is, it might not necessarily be sustainable, and they've only followed it, which what I would say is not just their best performance of the season so far, but also a performance that went to another level, just in how convincing they were, it was actually, elements of it were quite like some of Klopp's best performances, in the sense, it's obviously not the same tactically, but more in the sense of how Madrid just couldn't live with Liverpool's intensity. And that we're talking, that's like the kind of the best of Anfield in Europe that we're talking about. And suddenly that is a real benchmark for the season. On the other side, I suppose, it's not just about how good Liverpool are, but whether this maybe creates a bit of an opening for the Champions League, given, we'll talk about City's issues. But, Madrid, it's been City and Madrid who've been the two dominant teams for the last few years. And suddenly Liverpool made them look so ordinary. And if Madrid are to recover, to get to Liverpool's level, which, to be fair, we know they're always capable of, as John has referenced there, but they've got some way to go. And at the moment, though, it feels like they've got more issues than form or psychology or anything like that. It doesn't look like the team is right. I wrote a piece yesterday for The Independent that there is, as brilliant as Mbappe is, and I know he missed a penalty tonight, there is a possibility that he almost represents a modern-day Beckham from Miguel, in that it's a great player and a signing that makes sense from a kind of a glamour perspective, but it doesn't necessarily fit the team. And even you can see, could the wages on Mbappe, could they have been used better on, say, a replacement for Toni Kroos? It'd be like that team, as John said, it's got issues now.
Yeah, it has. Vinicius Junior injured tonight, which in a way made it easier a little bit for Mbappe. Let's just return to Liverpool. We'll touch on Real Madrid, John, but go to your paper. Mac of the net is the headline there. Alexis McAllister goal scoring, celebrating with Luis Diaz riding high on his back. Chris McKenna there for you. And I just wonder, John, in terms of what Liverpool can achieve, how important is this balance in the squad? So Bosley dropped tonight. It feels like there's a little bit of a depth to it. Does that help convince you that they can go all the way in this competition, possibly the Premier League as well?
Oh, absolutely. Teddy, they're giving themselves a fantastic opportunity, because when you see the confidence that's kind of flowing through that team from being top of their Champions League group, from being top of the Premier League, I think they're playing the best football in Europe right now. I think they're fantastic to watch. Slot has done a remarkable job in also kind of almost shoring up the defence. Is almost gone unnoticed because they're so efficient in attack, but they're so much tighter, I think, in defence. And he's done that by sort of almost balancing the midfield. I think they've got a really nice feel to the team. And when you are giving yourselves an 8-point lead at the top of the Premier League, it almost puts a little bit of pressure on because you're so far ahead. But it does give you a hell of a head start, and you know it's for then really for City to catch them, for Arsenal to catch them 9 points behind as well. And it's just an amazing opportunity right now for Liverpool. I do think they've got depth throughout the squad. They've got a nice kind of feel as if you can change players in midfield. You know, I love the kind of maturity and sort of the way that Curtis Jones has evolved this season into becoming a really, huge player for Liverpool and the first team. He's got the fullbacks looking much more solid, if you like. He's got the balance right. He's got Gakpo, the best out of Gakpo, and who I thought, frankly, up until this season looked a little bit average at times. And I just think the way that he's kind of evolved and developed, I think, has been fantastic. He's set players challenges like Nunes and really getting the best out of players' slot. So I do think there's so much on offer for Liverpool. There's so much they can win, and particularly because they have this confidence that comes from this incredible 100% start in the Champions League, better than anyone else, and obviously sitting pretty at the top of the Premier League too.
A lot of optimism ahead of that Manchester City game, 4 p.m. kickoff on Sky Sports on Sunday. Let's switch from Liverpool to Aston Villa, Miguel, who are a feel-good story at the start of the season, but it's 7 without a win, but perhaps really unlucky tonight at Villa Park. This is Sam Wallace, chief football writer at Villa Park for The Telegraph. Villa denied at the death as VAR comes to Juventus' rescue. Miguel, just how unfortunate were they to have the Morgan Rogers goal disallowed?
I have to say, watching it in real time, I didn't think it should be disallowed. It just looked, a bit of the player going up with a goalkeeper, ball drops, goal. Then I suppose this is where you kind of get into bigger debates about VAR. There is one freeze frame shot where it shows Carlos kind of sticking out his elbow into the goalkeeper. And then from that perspective, you could understand it more. But is that kind of the threshold for the decision? Is that clear and obvious? Whatever way you want to look at it in that sense. In real time, I felt it was harsh. But I suppose it does. I mean, Juventus, this isn't the Juventus of a few years ago that won 9 in a row, but it's still obviously one of the great names of European football, and they have improved under Motta. Look, a year ago, Villa would have been, if they were in a situation where they're complaining about a 0-0 draw with Juventus, it would have felt remarkable. Maybe there's a bit of just a slight sense of the moment, something we've discussed on the show before, that Villa are facing that classic problem that clubs who have overachieved do. And it's suddenly when they get into the Champions League, it's so more taxing on your squad. It demands such a greater level of intensity, as we saw, say, in that great night against Bayern Munich, that it can start to have a knock-on effect. Newcastle had the exact same last season, and it is why a result or a win tonight would have been so significant, because it would have just provided that emotional boost.
How do you assess the situation for Aston Villa, John? They're slipped to 8th in the Premier League, but only a win outside the top 4. 9th now in the Champions League, outside the automatic top 8. Is there a temptation here for Unai Emery to focus on Europe? We know about his pedigree. Does the Champions League, in a way, perhaps yield more success if he does have to manage his resources?
No, I actually think that in the grand scheme of things, I think that it would be wrong to do that, because I think there's, potentially 5 places for the Champions League places up for grabs. I think it's always going to be a tall order for Villa to really go deep into that Champions League stages. Listen, I'm very confident that it'll basically see it out into the knockout stages. And then when you feel the atmosphere at a Villa Park night, I do think, they'll stand a good chance of overwhelming opponents there. Don't get me wrong. But I think it is about depth of squad. I do think they had to kind of sell and refresh, balance the books, replenish players, lose players, bring players in, and it was about sort of kind of feeling their way a bit. I mean, I always have this kind of theory that in the Champions League, it takes maybe 1, 2, 3 years to really establish yourselves as a European force. Unai Emery has a better chance than most of doing that with Aston Villa, but I do think with this season it was always going to be a hard one for Villa, and I do think it's a test now, because when you are seeing those games come at you every 3 days or so, then it's a massive test of resources. It's a massive test of your squad strength. And I just think that Villa are still evolving as a team, as a squad. Look, I would, if you're choosing your top 5 now, I'd bet on Villa to make it basically into the Champions League if England get 5 Premier League places into the Champions League. But I do think that also, on balance, it's still been a remarkable season. You know, we've enjoyed already sort of kind of great European nights. I thought that decision was an absolute scandal. They should have won. And then if they've won, then you're looking at a slightly different table with them sort of kind of 2 points better off and sort of kind of, you know, looking at sort of very sort of almost secure into that top 8. So you avoided sort of kind of the first round of the knockout, which is a massive incentive. So I do think that Villa is still having a really, really strong season on balance.
Feels like the game's gone a bit soft, doesn't it, Di Gregorio, with that decision tonight for Juve? Perhaps a little fortunate, certainly by historical standards. Let's go to the Telegraph and talk managerial matters. Of course, again, it's Liverpool dominating in the front page of the Sports Supplement. We're the real deal. Slots sideland blow on champions to leave Europe quaking. But on the right-hand side there, let's talk about Ruud van Nistelrooy. In advance talks about Leicester job, reports John Percy, similar to what we've been reporting on Sky Sports News, saying Leicester City are in advance talks with the Dutchman over the vacant managerial post. Miguel, what's your take on this? Is this a good fit?
Well, look, I mean, Van Nistelrooy, he had a good spell at PSV in that one season before he left because he felt he wasn't backed. He impressed at Manchester United. Maybe this brief run that he got before Amorim came in could be one of those hinge moments in a career, because, you know, he played Leicester during that spell. And obviously, I suppose, reasserted some of his coaching qualities. I think it's like it fairly known, or it has been reported a lot, at least by myself, that Leicester would have been in, or would have seen Potter as an ideal candidate. Again, that's something didn't transpire. But this looks like a very promising option. I mean, anyone you speak to, they do talk highly of Van Nistelrooy. The United squad really enjoyed him. I know it's possible to get a bit kind of run away in those situations, given he's a club legend, and it's one of those brief periods in the same way, say, Solskjaer had. But he does have a lot going for his managerial career. And it's also, there's a bit of excitement now about Leicester after, I mean, Cooper, who I do think is a very good coach, did a really good job at Forest. Obviously, the fit there wasn't quite right, and the fans never really took to him. And now there's something a bit different and distinctive about Leicester City.
John, what's your feelings on it? We talk about statistical analysis and sports science now, but does anything beat Ruud van Nistelrooy bounding down the touchline after thrashing your team to stick in the mind of the Leicester City owner? Is this about recency bias and pure emotion? He's fell in love with the man that inflicted so much pain on him a couple of times over the past few weeks?
Recency bias is exactly the right phrase, Teddy, I've got to say, because I do think they're pinning a lot of faith in what Ruud van Nistelrooy did at Manchester United during that brief interim spell. I mean, he did galvanise the squad and he did bring them together. He's also played into the fact that he's a Man United club legend. And yes, you know, if you were Leicester City and sort of kind of saw that, you would definitely think, wow, this is positive at Old Trafford. So I'm sure the hierarchy were there and probably felt the good vibes and sort of kind of, you know, fed into that. And I mean, listen, I did look at it and think, is there an obvious choice out there? And it did feel to me as if they, you know, the crowd and the players didn't take to you know, Steve Cooper particularly. I wonder whether that's because of previous links, but I actually think Cooper did a really good job, because I just think after this stage of the season, you know, look at the table. Yes, losing, you know, the first game back after the international break was a blow, but they went into it in what, 15th? Well, I mean, you bite your hand off of that at the start of the season. I thought he was laying foundations, really. So I thought it was harsh on him. And obviously they've got different expectations. And also I think it plays into basically maybe also that Cooper not being the right fit. Well, they should have thought about that in the summer, really. I think he's been a bit harshly treated. And I do think that the Van Nistelrooy, to me, really signals a bit of a gamble. But I do think that you can buy into his energy. I think he speaks really well. I think he kind of puts across an attacking philosophy. But I do think it's a gamble based on, frankly, a month in charge as interim boss at Old Trafford. And I think that's a big gamble. I mean, he's definitely a manager in waiting, but I'm almost surprised that he's sort of kind of taken on a Premier League relegation dogfight as his first, major job as a permanent manager in this country.
Yeah, it feels like a big challenge, doesn't it? Particularly actually away at Brentford, who've got the best home record in the division at the weekend. Rob Dorset reporting for us. He may be in charge for that one. We'll keep across that story on Sky Sports News. We'll take a quick break now, but when we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including in the Sun. Liverpool featuring again, but also İlkay Gündoğan warning Manchester City lose at Anfield, and we're out of the title race. Welcome back. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to Miguel Delaney, Chief Football Writer for The Independent, and the Mirror's Chief Football Writer, John Cross. So let's go to the back page of the Mail. Miguel, come to you with this, right-hand side. Sorry about that, but try and explain this one. City case may not be settled until the end of next season. This is the alleged 115 charges that Manchester City deny. Miguel, why could it be taking so long?
Well, I suppose ultimately it's down to the complexity of the case. The hearing has also gone on a bit longer than expected in that I think it was first broken by the lawyer today, who've been quite well informed, like a trade magazine, on this case, that the hearing itself isn't expected to be concluded until mid-December. And then they're talking about a 3-month wait until we actually get some sort of outcome from that. I mean, because initially the timescale at the start of the season had been that we'd get maybe an outcome in January and then an appeal, which they were hoping, if it does go to the appeal, which everyone expects, that will be done by April. Instead, we could be talking about March for an outcome, which would take any appeal into next season. So this could drag on, like all this kind of, I suppose, talk of what could be done to the table, whether City are kind of found completely innocent. That all those questions could potentially go into another campaign. I suppose just creating more uncertainty. But again, that's not really surprising given the scale of this case. I mean, just from reading something like Martin Ziegler has an article in the Times about it as well, where he talks about, in similar hearings in other non-sport areas, in some cases have been waiting a year for an outcome because such has been the depth. And I suppose in some way that was always a possibility with something where there are this many charges and this much to go through.
Complicated picture off the pitch then for Manchester City, and on it at the moment, of course, with the side's form. John, come to you now in a piece by Oliver Brown in The Telegraph. Guardiola's scars show the cost of quest for perfection. Pep's come out and apologised for any of his comments post-match against Feyenoord, saying he wasn't attempting to trivialise self-harm or anything like that. But Brown writes City's manager's extreme stress reaction to latest blow is proof that even a footballing genius is not impervious to despair. What were your reflections on Pep post-match after the collapse against Feyenoord? Are you concerned for him?
Yeah, I would be, really. He does look a manager under strain and stress. Yes, those remarks, upon reflection, he was right to apologise. I think it was a respectful and the correct thing to do. But I do think it reflects the sheer toll that it's taken on him on the touchline. I mean, some of the defending and then sort of kind of the performance level. He must be wondering what's happened there. I do think also we need sometimes to remember some of these guys, including Pep, they're not even talking their first language. So basically, they're answering these questions in such depth and detail, and sometimes those kind of little nuances in an answer, which is done in the height of kind of intensity and passion straight after games, as he did. I think it was Sam Lee's question, wasn't it, in the press conference? He's just giving an honest answer and then leaves with an unfortunate kind of almost smile. And I think sometimes we need to offer them a little bit more respect. I think if we're asking at the same time, yes, maybe it was unfortunate, but also I think it's in the sort of kind of the heat of the moment, if you like, and it's a difficult one. I think it belies a really difficult time for Guardiola and for Manchester City. He's not used to this. He's not used to losing. He's not used to kind of even drawing. So, it's taking its toll. But I really worry about the stress and the strains for managers like him on the touchline. And that's played out in a very, how can you put it, almost embarrassing way for him on the touchline, and no one wants to see that kind of strain on the manager, and the way that he's kind of physically grabbed himself is just absolutely deeply concerning, I think.
Even the success, I suppose, in context makes it so vexing for him, the defeats. But we do wish him the well, of course, as well being more important than football. But on the football front, Miguel, as that's our sort of chief purpose on the show, I suppose. The back page of the Mirror, İlkay Gündoğan's comments reflected also on the Sun. They say, title gone if we lose at Anfield. Is Gündoğan right, Miguel?
It is City. And, I mean, there is, no matter what happens right now, there is, I suppose, this awareness that they're capable of going on a run like they have done in all of the last few seasons. But I suppose that is why this situation is also in its own way quite fascinating, because it's City, yes, but City have never encountered a run like this. Guardiola has never encountered a run like this, which is obviously feeding into this situation. And like an all-time genius manager who's probably capable of thinking about the game to a deeper level than anyone we've ever seen, now actually think his way out of something like this that he hasn't experienced, and that's what's so enthralling about the situation. And suddenly, I mean, Liverpool City, it had already been the game of the season. It's been kind of like one of the rivalries that's defined the Premier League over the last half decade or so, and now it potentially forms the story of the season because of the possible consequences either way. I think it is interesting, it's key actually that we could have Ruben Dias back, because I mean, I think one of the issues at City at the moment is they've lost too many of their key players who are close to their prime. Rodri obviously been the big one, but also Ruben Dias. And I think that's left a team that's been largely dependent. I mean, there is kind of a bigger discussion over whether City have refreshed as well as they have previously. It's left a team with a lot of players maybe towards closer to the end of their career. And I've also had to listen to Guardiola for a long time. And he is intense. And that can grate on players. When the message starts to go kind of, it becomes a bit stale. That's where you need refreshment. And that's where you need players in their prime like Ruben Dias back.
Intrigued to see how they get on Sunday at Liverpool. Let's talk Manchester United. Bodo Glimt up next for them Thursday night. John, comments though around Rashford, perhaps eerily familiar for United fans. Amorim warns Rashford, rediscovering your best form starts with your attitude. John, we've got just under a minute here. What's your assessment of these comments? He said he'd never criticise his players, but are these sort of worryingly familiar for Marcus Rashford?
Yeah, tiptoeing, diplomatic, careful. Basically, Amorim really is challenging Marcus Rashford, isn't he, to kind of really rediscover his form. He's talking up his talent, but also saying very much that he has to show the desire and the determination himself to do it. Listen, everyone will remember his golden season of a couple of seasons ago. His pace is outstanding. He can be a fabulous player. He's a brilliant asset for Manchester United, but at some point, and what he's done, I think, for the club and for the whole of the country has been remarkable at times. But what he really needs to get back to his best form to convince this new manager. I think he can do it. I certainly think he's got a manager showing a passion and a commitment to the player too, which is great.
John, I have to jump in there. Thank you very much. John and Miguel, speak to you again soon. Thanks for watching. If you missed any of this show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. Also available as a podcast. Download Back Pages wherever you get your podcast.